Welcome to the Business of Design podcast. I'm Cheryl Horn, Director of Operations for Business of Design. A lot has changed at Business of Design since this episode originally aired. For the latest information and rates on events and membership at Business of Design, head to businessofdesign.com. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello. Welcome to episode number 153, Business of Design. I'm Kimberley Selden, your host, and a super busy interior design professional. I don't know about you guys, but I seem to do so much better with really huge projects where we're just fully in it. When it gets to the point where there's 3 things left to do on 6 projects, I kind of lose my mind, and that's where I'm at the moment. Just a few little dribs and drabs, deficiencies that aren't done, or one little thing the client added at the last minute, and it just keeps pulling me back into a project that should be done, but it's not, and that's where I'm at today. So, oh well, poor me, right? Nobody's got sympathy because you got your own stuff going on. That's why we get along so well, because we understand each other. I am heading out the door for 3 weeks in beautiful Bali and New Zealand. Pure vacation. I'm going to do a yoga retreat, and then I'm going to be staying with some friends at a beach house, and then I'll be doing some hiking, etc. in New Zealand, all with girlfriends, and I'm really looking forward to it. And that means that you're going to have Cheryl on the podcast next week, I think, doing the introductions, if that's how things go. I can't quite remember. But anyway, for today, you have me and an interesting conversation with an architect. And so I'm going to pose the question, can architects and designers be friends? And listening to this interview again, the answer is, gosh, I don't know. It's so challenging. And I think our guest, Ramona Albert, who is an architect in New York and Connecticut, has some really good insights into the dilemma. For one thing, the areas of expertise can get blurred. And I think that it's true in my own office. When I don't have a clear job description for staff, things go wrong. And when I have a crystal clear job description, things go better. So why wouldn't that also be true in the real world when interior designers and architects get together on a project and our skill sets cross over a bit sometimes? So Ramona's got some really good insights. I don't think we solved any problems, but as you're listening, if you're thinking, I know another architect that should be on the podcast because we need to talk this through, we would love to hear from you. There are architects who are members of Business of Design, and we've talked to so many of them personally and understand their struggles are similar to our struggles, and being profitable is a challenge for them like it is for us. And running businesses in a streamlined fashion, exactly the same. So we have much more in common than we have as differences. And I think that'll become clear in the conversation as well. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ramona. She is an award-winning architect, and she lives in Brooklyn. She has a Brooklyn-based studio, and she's founder and principal of Ramona Albert Architecture. She relies on her extensive experience in construction management to develop buildings and products from inception to final construction. She loves to innovate. She loves to take the project all the way. In fact, she even refers to designing candlesticks for a project, which is something I've never done, and I think I'm pretty darn detail-oriented. She holds a Master of Architecture from Harvard University Graduate School of Design. She's taught, she's lectured, and she's even published some of her own work. One thing Ramona says in the episode might surprise some of you. She says there is a push in the architecture world for architects to take back the interiors. I think that's going to make some of you mad, and I don't want it to, because the truth is, if an architect feels that she or he can do the whole project top to bottom in a home, why shouldn't they be able to do that? Which would then also mean, as an interior designer who's a licensed interior designer, we should also be able to build homes of the allowable scale, depending on where you live. It's unfortunate. I think our associations have done a very poor job of educating clients. And that was something when I graduated from design school in 1991 that all the associations said, oh yeah, we're going to definitely educate clients about the difference between designers and decorators, which has not happened at all. And given that it has not happened at all, and in fact, after this episode with Ramona, I think the lines are blurred between interior designers and architects as well. we're on our own to advocate in a smart way while being compliant with the laws in the state or the province or the country that you live in. So it's really important that you're always checking to make sure you are in compliance. It's my belief there's a workaround if you're not, and one of the workarounds is becoming a contractor. And Ramona mentions that she's a contractor as well. We're going to talk more about that through Business of Design membership in the coming years because I think that's becoming more and more of an issue. And I realize it doesn't affect everybody. There are some people who just absolutely love doing the decorating and the design, and I completely understand how wonderful that is. And there are also some of you who have great relationships with general contractors, and you've figured it out. You've figured out how you want to work together. But I will say this, if you want to make 7 figures as an interior design professional, I don't believe you can do it only doing decorating. I've never been able to figure out how to do that. But if you want to make 7 figures and you're also really building projects and managing the projects and acting as the lead on the project, that's the big thing for me. Act as the lead on the project. Remember the Jedi mantra? I am the expert. I am the prize. I am on a mission to help. I can only help if I lead. Right? We talked about that in Blair N's episode, just one episode back, I think. So we'll talk more about that and those wise words on a future episode. But for me, that's what it boils down to. I want to be the lead on the project because that's the only way I can ensure that my ideas get carried through to fruition. And in my experience, it's the best way to ensure I'm going to have a happy client at the end of the project. They want me to be the lead too. So lots of reasons to figure out how to remain compliant while doing your job. And I have not yet been able to find a lawyer who can tackle that problem, believe it or not. So if you've got someone wise and wily who's willing to figure it out, Business of Design will hire that person. Please let us know. We're going to jump right into the episode with very few announcements. We have so many things that are going to be happening. I'm just going to tease you with all of them. Business of Design Elite Retreat Palm Springs 2020. Registration is going to open on March 16th. As usual, we send out early bird notification to those members who attended a previous retreat or the conference. So check your inbox if you don't have that information because it's only going to be available to you for a couple of weeks. We'll let you know how many spots are available after that. We are also planning for Business of Design Conference 2021, and that's going to happen again at Las Vegas Market, January 23rd and 24th. So if you're thinking this year, should I go to KBIS or should I go to Business of Design's conference? You absolutely want to make the choice to go to Business of Design's conference or go to KBIS and hang around for a few extra days and then come to Business of Design conference, or start your trip with Business of Design conference and then go to Las Vegas Market afterwards. But anyway, more details are coming about that. A real quick push for membership. Those of you who are paid members, we cannot do the important work without you. So thank you so much. I'm going to mention one last thing. If you live in Australia, aren't you lucky? It's beautiful there. And I am looking forward to going back to Australia, in particular to Byron Bay, to participate in a retreat that's being hosted by design coach Andrew Mitchell. I am not sure where Andrew is in terms of how many spaces are available, but I know his retreats have sold out in the past, and he is looking to fill up his September retreat. He'll be coming onto the show in a couple of episodes, and he'll tell you more about the retreat then. And now we're going to jump into the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Welcome to the Business of Design podcast with Kimberley Selden. Business of Design is the coaching community for independent designers like you. We know it takes more than hard work and talent to successfully run a professional design firm. There are proven business strategies that can solve your immediate challenges and transform your life. Don't try to do this alone. Join today and you'll have access to more than 100 video courses, participate in monthly coaching calls, and find unlimited support within our exclusive members-only Facebook group. Unlike traditional coaching, BOD is a fast track to immediate results for independent interior designers, decorators, architects, stagers, and landscapers just like you. Monthly membership is only $79. What are you waiting for? We all know design matters. At Business of Design, we think designers matter too.
Hey, Ramona, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I see behind you, there's like a flurry of work at the office happening today. Are you busy with a bunch of projects or one specific one you're trying to get out the door?
We have a few things going on, but one of them is actually a new townhouse renovation that we're doing in Brooklyn. So it's kind of we're building a new building and we're doing a townhouse renovation. So it's interesting. It's two different things, but very similar.
Fun,
among other things. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. It's nice to have a conversation with someone who's squeezing it in like me today because work is busy. That's wonderful. Can we first just talk about like what's the difference between an architect and an interior design professional in your mind?
Oh my God, that's an interesting question because we always have we talk about this often. As architects, there's always, it's like between architects and contractors and architects and interior designers, there's always this kind of conversation, like, who's right, who's not right. But honestly, I value a lot interior designers because it's a specialty job. It's a specialty job, especially because you're dealing with so many issues that, first of all, architects don't know or don't care to deal with. I'll just be really honest about it.
What in your mind are those issues, though? What do you think are the issues that designers deal with that architects don't want to deal with? I bet we don't want to deal with them either, but yeah, I'd love to hear.
It's so it's funny because there's this push in the architecture world and in the construction world, and that because of speed, for example, take a condo building, right? And because of speed and money and turnaround times, the architects usually stop designing the building when it comes to the interiors. So most of the times the interiors are these bleak, empty spaces, they're just like painted white and left for, outfitted with the cheapest kind of materials,
Because the architects focused his or her attention on the outside of the building and what it looks like.
Because usually developers want the architects to only create a shell. So right. When it comes to the construction of larger buildings, usually architects are tasked with creating the shell with the larger ideas and understanding what the facade and the exterior looks like, and then the interiors are kind of not really thought through. So they're left to desire.
An afterthought.
It's an afterthought, but I see a big problem with that, and I'll tell you why. Because actually we love to go all the way and actually understand what the interior spaces are like and design fully, and that's actually a very kind of modernist approach to design. To kind of think about all the steps all the way to the end, but given that our times have changed and developers drive the process, what happens is that they do not bring in the interior designers at the moment when the building is designed. And so there's a discrepancy between the interiors and then the exteriors of the building. And so I see actually a problem with that. Obviously everybody runs their building projects as they want to run them, but my problem is that then there is not a harmony between the exterior and interior. So if you were to bring interior designers in from the beginning of the project and have them design the interiors of each of the condo accordingly, I think there would be a lot more harmony and beauty in the project itself. But most of the time, it's not done like that. Every residential owner hires their own interior designer to then outfit the property.
Right. And then some interior design professionals are going to be good. And in that case, they're going to respect the architecture and they're going to carry that through. And others are going to say, I don't care a bit that it's modern. I want a Victorian mashup. And so game on. Yeah. So I completely understand that. But I always think it is so much better to have everybody involved at the same time. But I understand from a cost perspective why clients don't do it. And so what happens in our world a lot is we're hired after the architect has been handed the client's drawing package.
which is not complete. And it's not complete because everything hasn't been carried through the interior. And so then we start working on the interior and we realize some things aren't meshing up with the exterior. And so that's fine. It can be fixed, but it'd be just so much more seamless to have it all happen at once. We often like to hire the architect after we've been hired to go through our drawings and say, hey, what do you think? Add your spin on things. Help us with all of the structural roof lines. I don't know how to do any of that. Like I, draw a roof and it's a triangle. But there does seem to be some tension in the industry between the two factions. And I can speak for the interior design side. Often interior design professionals think architects take all the money up front and there's nothing left over for interior design, right? But when I talk to architects, they're like, no, we don't get all the money. So tell me about that. What's your impression of that?
It's interesting that I don't think that's the case. I think it depends on the client as well and how much they value, every piece of the project. But I think we have to go beyond these kinds of conversations, because there was just one of the guys, like someone who will be running the Biennale this year. He suggested, architects should take back the interiors. There was a conversation about architects taking back the interiors. Well, I think our world has become so specialized, that there is a lot of value in understanding the specialty of each professional, and I know that everybody's fighting for that slice and for that piece of money, from the client. But I'm trying to understand, because I don't think that the projects are successful if you try hiding one person from the other. If you bring in both pieces of the team together and to kind of try to figure out the project, because if you come in, for example, if interior designers come in and there's no walls to run, you want to put in a sink or you want to put in a fireplace or something, but there's no flutes, there's nothing for you to be able to connect to, then that's a problem. But these are issues that usually architects don't really think about when you design, when you're given a problem of designing a shell.
Right.
One of the very successful projects that was great is that I was involved with the TWA terminal in the Saarinen TWA terminal, where I consulted for the design of the facade. So I was involved with the facade, but given the nature of the project and given the kind of quality, of achievement that they wanted to get to, they brought in the interior design team. And so the interior design team worked very carefully with the architectural team to kind of understand, and also with everyone, in the process, to understand where the pieces of the puzzle fall in. So that was carefully thought out from the beginning, which was a great. Mm-hmm. Which was great. Also, it's a hotel, so it's a little bit different than a condo when you bring in your own interior designer.
Right. And it definitely speaks to my sort of kind of gross generalization that architects work from the outside in and interior designers work from the inside out. And if as an interior designer, if I'm not paying attention to what's on the outside, I've really ruined the project. But as an architect, if I'm not paying attention to what's on the inside, I feel like I've also ruined the project. So It's interesting that we don't, it's interesting that we're just not more seamless together. And in fact, I do think architects should take back the interiors if they have the capacity to really give them their full attention. That's fine. Just like a lot of interior designers will do the outside of a home and the inside of a home to the extent that our ability allows that. But it's not for everybody, right? There are those architects, I assume, who just want to do the shell because that's a completely specialized talent, which I don't have, which I think is incredible. And then there are some who I do think of the interior as being kind of an afterthought, which is too bad, because I think sometimes I look at architectural websites and I think the website would be so much better if they hired an interior designer, even just at the end to furnish.
Yeah, and that's an issue as well, because when the focus is on the form, when the focus is on the, and on the idea of the form, you don't really think about the details, that kind of becomes so minuscule that it becomes unimportant. And so these, I think this goes to different kinds of schools of thought, right? There's the kind of modernist schools of thought, which thinks, we should get involved in everything all the way down to the furniture and think about, that architects are part of the full project spectrum. Then there is the kind of more contemporary, and then the more, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's a more contemporary kind of specialty process where there's specialized ways of doing this, and interior designers have a way of understanding the interiors. And also there's a lot of relationships that interior designers have that architects do not have, that can pull together a project from beginning to end very quickly, and these relationships are generated over time. So, and it's the same with contractors, there's always this conversation of the contractor ruined my project, then there's, so then, and you advocate for working very closely with the contractors, and actually
we agree right on that if you don't if you're not managing the contractor, someone has to be the lead on the project. And if the lead is the architect, then the architect has to manage the contractor all the way through. And if the lead is the interior designer, then she has to manage the contractor all the way through. Because if you let the contractor manage the project, it will not look like the drawing package, no matter who did it, a designer or an architect. It's going to be different.
Yeah. So, and I have to tell you, I've definitely been approached by interior designers to file their drawings.
You mean a stamp?
A stamp. So I'm a licensed architect in New York and in Connecticut, and I can get reciprocity in any state, so it's not an issue. And I'm also a licensed contractor, believe it or not. It's weird.
No, it's coming to the point where we're teaching interior designers that if you really want to have control of your projects, you're going to have to be a licensed contractor, because there's no other way to maintain control of the project.
I think so. And it's what I wanted to say is that it's very interesting that I've been approached by interior designers to just simply stamp the drawings, and I refuse to do that. That's something that I don't usually do, because stamps come with their own responsibility, and if something falls on someone's head, so
they want you to stamp it without a review. They want you to stamp it without a review?
Yeah, it's very common that people ask that question.
Oh, that's crazy. It's quite expensive to get a stamp. If you hire a company that's going to do a thorough review, the stamp is pricey and worthwhile.
Yeah, but it's interesting having this conversation. I refuse to do that. I do not like stamping other people's drawings, because we're a very much design-oriented office. So we don't like to just give out the stamp for other uses. So we refuse those projects unless we're involved in the design of the project itself. But yes, there are other architecture companies who that's what they do. They review drawings and they stamp them. And that's a different kind of architecture office. Those are usually architecture offices who are not involved in the design, and they don't care, of what.
Yeah. The architects I know who do that see that as a little side hustle, extra income that comes in, and they might assign an intermediate architect to the job of reviewing the drawings and making sure everything is to code, et cetera. And so it's a cash thing. It's a cash flow thing. It keeps the money coming in, kind of thing. But I also understand saying I don't want to get involved in that, because the minute you review those drawings, of course, you have liability, and that's why the states want you to do that, so they can spread the liability around.
It's a business decision.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I get why it wouldn't work for somebody. And I also get why somebody else says, yeah, I have a huge staff. Not everybody's busy every single day. If, we can bring in 100 of those projects a year, that's a nice revenue stream. And yeah, I understand making the choice one way or the other. But you do absorb the liability, though, for sure.
You do.
A portion of it anyway. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So then in terms of things that have happened personally to you on job sites with interior design professionals, what would you say to us are things that we could maybe think about, or things that we could do better, things that would make it easier for an architect to work with us?
I'm a big proponent of day one kind of involvement of the whole team, because, and I think one of the things that it's hard to tell everyone is that I think egos kind of have to go away. And that's one of the things that kind of gets in the way of a successful project. You know, I've been involved in very large projects where I've heard the word, interior designers, bring them in. They can just, put on wallpaper, and it's always been the conversation of, no, that's not what we want. If you want a successful project, then don't just bring them in to put on wallpaper. Then we need to have a larger conversation about what we want to do to the end of the project. On every project that I have, actually, even though, like I said, we do a lot of the interiors, I do collaborate with interior designers from the beginning. So my team is put together from the very beginning of the design process. And I think that's one of the ways that you can actually create more successful projects. And so I think the ego thing is a big thing. And there's always been, I remember when I was in graduate school, this idea of interior design was just, everybody was telling us that, they're not needed, and the more I was in the real world, where we were doing a lot of projects, I realized that, yes, there's definitely, there's so much knowledge that we don't have that they can bring into the table.
Yeah. And so I guess it's up to each professional to decide what they can be expert and amazing at. And if what you can be expert and amazing at is everything from top to bottom, awesome. Oh, and by the way, I love what you said about ego. It's true, right? Like whoever has the best idea that serves the client, that idea should be brought forward, right? It doesn't matter who had the good idea.
I know, it's easy to say, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I do find women are better at it than men. I have to say, I've had very difficult relationships with some male general contractors who just don't ever want to cooperate.
Yeah.
Do you ever run into that as an architect, or is that just lucky us?
Well, I used to be a project manager for Tishman Construction. So I managed $200 million of facade work. And I have to tell you that when I left, the installers were crying. These big guys, big muscles, they're crying. And to this day, I am very good friends with them, and I am going to visit them. They're building one Vanderbilt right now, which is a big tower in New York, and I'm going to visit them. And I love being one of the guys. I understand the rough and tough kind of conversations, and it's usually, it doesn't bother me. I understand it's just temporary, and you scream and get it out, your system, and then you can move on.
Yeah.
It's like little kids, so it's so obviously I've had many frustrating interactions, but I've had some of the most amazing interactions. And I'll tell you why, because I learned a lot from these guys.
For sure.
I learned so much, and we learned from each other. Now, having come to the smaller building process, now that I'm on my own and I'm not...
You're not Tishman. I was going to say, you're in a very different position when you're Tishman.
Yeah. So it was so now that I'm on my own and I'm dealing with contractors that are on a smaller scale. And I was talking to a contractor on the phone, and we were having a conversation, almost an introductory conversation. And I asked him, what do you think if we would just bring the whole thing in, crane it in? It's not that big, let's crane it in. And the guy just screamed at me, and he goes, are you effing crazy? Call me back when you've learned how to build something. And he hung up the phone.
No way.
And I was like, okay, fine, next. But I realized
because for them, that's a death knell to part of what they do, right? So they see that's like asking a taxi driver about Uber.
Yeah, right. But it was the whole thing, which probably it was one of those childish things. Probably if I would have been a 50-year-old guy, I would have not gotten the phone hung up in my face. You know
Probably.
What I mean? Yeah, it wouldn't. But I just sat there for a second and I thought, did this happen? Is this guy honestly, did he just do this? And it happens to me a lot. a lot.
Yeah.
And so the relationship between interior designers and us, I feel like it's a lot more ego driven, in terms of territorial, whereas when it comes to these relationships with contractors, again, then it's like a relationship of showing who knows more, that even if you design something, they know more, and then you haven't done the proper thing.
Yeah. Well, that also boils down to egotism.
Yeah.
So it's like all of us maybe need to check it at the door, right? I try when I'm entering a job where there's going to be a team to really put myself in a position where I'm there to be of service to the client. That's my job. And if being of service to the client means I have a great idea on Monday, but on Wednesday I take the great idea from the architect, that's fine. That's how it's supposed to go, right?
And it's also, I have to say something, it's also client education, because a lot of the times the clients and developers drive the process and they decide who comes first. What happened, I think, is that the lines are so blurred that it's unclear what anybody does. Right. It's unclear what architects do. It's unclear what interior designers do. And that has to somehow evolve. And I ask myself the question every day of how do we kind of together define the roles? Because the engineering roles are clearly defined. I'm not going to start calculating loads for concrete. You're not going to either. And, no. But that's pretty clear. But when it comes to this kind of blurred boundaries, then I feel like we're all fighting for the same thing. And then we inadvertently, we try to backstab each other, because we're fighting for the same thing. Yeah.
I think that's true. I think perhaps only one person can be the lead. So in the way that I've worked with architects in the past, and even with GCs to an extent, is if the client phones me first and I bring the architect in, then I'm the lead on the project. If the architect gets the job first and they bring me in, then I work for the architect. Like that's how we do it. And it means that if I have a beef with something in the design, I would never tell the client because I work for the architect. That would be horrible. Why would I do that? To me, I feel like a lot of those problems get resolved by deciding who's the lead on the project, but you have to check your ego at the door. Like there are some contractors who just cannot allow an interior designer to be the lead. They can't. They have to be the lead. And so they're constantly throwing us under the bus. That's okay. We just can't work with those contractors. We need, that rare breed of contractor who also has got some humility. And, of course, we learn a ton from them. Of course we do.
I also think that the nature of the contractors is changing as people get older and the new generation is coming in. There's a lot more women actually involved. There's a lot more, it's younger people who kind of have a broader outlook on things. I think a lot of it is that the younger generation is kind of growing up and they're taking more on these roles. There can be a more technology forward conversation. And so the older generation, this kind of more patriarchal generation, so to call it, in the contracting world, disappears, which I think will be a lot more friendly towards interior designers and towards architects. So I think it's a generational thing as well. I see it as a generational thing quite a bit.
All right, good to know. Okay, we like to end every episode with something we call design intervention, which is just a great piece of business advice.
Never talk about yourself as a woman architect.
Right. Why do you need that qualifier?
I don't. I don't like having that conversation, and then I'm very particular about it because there's no need to kind of separate anyone. So when people tell me, you're a woman and you're an architect, I'm like, no, I'm an architect.
Right.
So
it's like the old joke. What do you call a female pilot? A pilot.
Yeah.
Just a pilot.
I think we need to get over that, yesterday, so it's something that I feel very strongly about, actually.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Good luck with all your projects.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of the Business of Design community. If you love what you hear on the podcast, take the next step by signing up at businessofdesign.com. As our thank you, you'll gain access to Business of Design's 15-step project management strategy, a free introductory course which includes 3 Business of Design systems you can implement for immediate results. And when you're ready for success, a Business of Design membership, monthly or annual, will dramatically improve your business and your life. What are you waiting for? Together we will achieve extraordinary results. Start today.